Hello and welcome to Ikulu Weekly. President William Ruto began the week in Gikambura, Kiambu County, where he joined the family, friends and community in laying to rest Mzee Isaac Ngugi, father of National Assembly Majority Leader Kimani Ichung'wah. He later traveled to Kilifi County to launch the Vipingo Special Economic Zone, a transformative 2,000-acre project that is expected to attract over 390 billion shillings in investment. Once complete, it will create 35,000 plus direct jobs and countless other economic opportunities. While at Vipingo Ridge, the president addressed the Arise Integrated Industrial Platforms Kenya Investment Forum 2025, bringing together global investors, policymakers, financial institutions, and industry leaders to unlock opportunities through special economic zones, which are central to Kenya and Africa's industrialization agenda. During the forum, he witnessed the signing of an MOU between the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry and the Linglong Group for the establishment of a state-of-the-art auto parts industrial park in Kenya. Still in Kilifi, President Ruto inspected the ongoing works on the 8-kilometer Dzitsoni-Jaribuni Road, part of the longer 37-kilometer Dzitsoni-Tezo Road, which will boost trade, ease transport, and improve connectivity in the region. In Mombasa County, the head of state commissioned the Mombasa Commuter Rail Service linking Miritini, Changamwe West, Changamwe East, Shimanzi, Mazeras, and Mombasa CBD. The service connects the city center with the SGR terminus at Miritini, easing congestion and offering faster, safer, and more reliable transport. He also addressed residents of Miritini, inspected the Kwajomvu interchange, and toured the ongoing 1,932-unit Nyali VOK affordable housing project. Towards the end of the week, President Ruto joined the 50th anniversary celebrations of the Evangelical Association of Kenya at C-10, Karen, reaffirming his commitment to working closely with faith leaders to build a nation founded on justice, compassion, and hope. He later hosted vice-chancellors of public universities to review progress in the management of the institutions and agree on priority areas of reform. The week concluded with the launch of the Social Health Authority SHA sponsorship program, through which more than 2.2 million vulnerable Kenyans will now access healthcare free of charge, a bold step towards achieving universal healthcare. That's it on Ikulu Weekly. Join us next week for more.
Kwanza, mimi nataka niseme karibuni sana. Najua wengi wenu ni mara ya kwanza kufika hapa State House. Today I am pleased to affirm that SHA is turning the vision of universal health coverage into a living reality for many Kenyans. To date, more than 26 million Kenyans have registered with SHA, and already 5.5 million of our people have accessed essential healthcare services. These are not cold numbers. These are lives transformed, families reassured, and a nation steadily moving towards the constitutional promise that health is a right for every citizen. Wale wanaolalamika kwamba nimefanya makao haya ati nimeshusha heshima ya State House, mimi nataka niwaambie, sijashusha heshima ya State House, nimeinua heshima ya Wakenya.
the African Union Committee of 10 on the United Nations Security Reform, representative of the President of the 80th United Nations General Assembly session, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I call to order the 7th Summit of the African Union Committee of 10 Heads of State and Government on the reform of the United Nations Security Council, C-10. It is my singular honor and to warmly welcome all of you to this historic commemorative summit of the C-10, convened on the margin of the high-level week of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly. Your esteemed presence today is testimony to our collective resolve and enduring commitment to the mandate of the C-10 and to advancing the common African position, enshrined in the Ezowini Consensus and the SAT Declaration, whose 20th anniversary we proudly commemorate. We shall now proceed to the opening statements. I shall first deliver my own statement as President of Sierra Leone and Coordinator of C-10. Your Excellency, Chairperson of the African Union Assembly, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government of the African Union Committee of 10 on United Nations Security Council, representative of the President of the 80th United Nations General Assembly session, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to welcome you to the 7th Summit of the African Union Committee of 10 on Security Council Reform, a gathering of great historical significance. We convene at a critical moment in our collective fight for justice and equity in global governance. This year marks 20 years since Africa's leaders adopted a common African position articulated in the landmark Ezowini Consensus and SAT Declaration of 2005. Then, Africa spoke with one voice, demanding no fewer than 2 permanent seats with all the rights and privileges of current permanent members, including the veto, and 2 additional non-permanent seats. This was not a plea for favor. It was and remains a demand for justice to correct a historical wrong. When the UN was founded in 1945, most of Africa had no voice. Today, Africa remains the only continent without permanent representation, despite African issues dominating the Council's agenda. This exclusion, a relic of bygone era, is a profound injustice. Decisions about Africa must no longer be taken without Africa. Excellencies, over the past 2 decades, guided by the Ezowini Consensus and SAT Declaration, the C-10 has been the custodian of Africa's demand. We have carried Africa's voice to every region, every forum, and every negotiation. Our greatest achievement has been our unity. Despite our diversity Africa has remained steadfastly aligned behind a single principled position. That unity is our strength. No reform can succeed without a united Africa. Through tireless advocacy, Africa has secured recognition of its case as both a priority and a special case. This recognition is firmly enshrined in UN outcome documents, including the 2024 Pact for the Future. The C-10 has built strong global partnerships. Today, Africa's inclusion is universally acknowledged as indispensable to any credible reform. Even the Permanent Five have in different ways publicly affirmed Africa's legitimate claim. Recently, the Freetown Retreat and Lusaka Ministerial Meeting produced the African Union Reform Model, a comprehensive, united, and actionable framework for structured dialogue in the intergovernmental negotiations. These accomplishments reflect Africa's resilience, solidarity, and determination. For 20 years, no African state has broken ranks. That unshakable unity has transformed Africa's once marginalized demand into a centerpiece of global reform debate. Excellencies, the hard truth is that our ultimate objective has not yet been achieved. 80 years after the establishment of the United Nations, the Security Council still operates under a structure that excludes Africa. This not only undermines the Council's credibility, but also challenges the universality of the UN as a whole. Today, therefore, I must restate Africa's clear and legitimate demand. To the permanent members, I reiterate that recognition should be accompanied by a genuine political willingness to take action. To member states involved in the intergovernmental negotiations, let us use the structured dialogue to build consensus on outcomes rather than recycle entrenched positions. To the wider United Nations membership, as the UN marks its 80th anniversary, let us not allow another milestone to pass with words alone. The Pact for the Future gives us the mandate. The Africa reform model adopted by C-10, rooted in Eswatini and SAT common African position, provides the blueprint for reform. The momentum is here. The time for action is now. Africa will continue to engage constructively. Let there be no doubt. Our demand is legitimate, non-negotiable, and just. Equal representation for Africa is not only an African imperative, it is a global necessity. It is essential for the credibility, effectiveness, and legitimacy of the United Nations in this century. As we commemorate 20 years of Eswatini and SAT, let history record that Africa stood together firm and resolute to reclaim its rightful place. Let this generation of leaders be remembered for correcting an injustice that has been endured for far too long, and for ensuring that the Security Council reflects the current state of the world rather than how it was in 1945. Thank you for your attention. I now have the pleasure to invite the representative of the President of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly to deliver a statement. Okay. At this juncture, I now invite His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, to deliver his remarks.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Excellence, Monsieur Julius Maada Bio, Président de la République du Sierra Leone et coordinateur du C-10. Excellence, Monsieur le Président Joao Lourenço, Président de la République de l'Angola et Président en exercice de l'Union africaine. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs les chefs d'État et de gouvernement membres du Comité des 10. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs. D'emblée, j'aimerais saluer les efforts de Son Excellence, Monsieur le Président Bio, pour le travail accompli et le leadership imprimé à la tête du Comité des 10.
For the work made as head of the C-10, the virtual meeting that took place in July by the C-10 had adopted the proposed model by member states in terms of security. We are meeting today bearing in mind that we have gotten to a crossroads on this historic process. This year, indeed, is the 20th anniversary, referencing two documents that reflect the common endeavor, the Ezewini Consensus Declaration. In those documents, we together design and define and mention our view on the future of this continent with the enlarged Security Council and 5 non-permanent membership. This is based on a strong conviction that United Nations must reflect today's realities, not 1945 realities.
Since the establishment of the United Nations, Africa has transformed from a collection of colonized and trusteeship territories into a continent of 55 sovereign nations, home to 1.4 billion people, more than a quarter of the General Assembly's membership. Africa hosts the highest number of UN-mandated missions, contributes to the largest contingents to UN peace operations, and bears the social and economic cost of conflict more than any other region. By 2050, Africa's young people will represent a third of the global workforce. Yet Africa remains the only region without a single permanent seat on the Security Council. This imbalance is no longer acceptable. The Ezewini Consensus and the Sirte Declaration remain the cornerstone of the African common position. They are built on fairness, legitimacy, and justice. They also reflect the objectives of our Constitutive Act and Agenda 2063 to ensure Africa's rightful place in global decision-making and to defend African common positions on all matters of concern to our peoples. We take note that many world leaders, the UN Secretary General in our common agenda, and even the 2024 Summit of the Future have recognized the need for the Security Council to be reformed. We acknowledge support from the Caribbean and the G77 plus China. Yet, despite this rhetorical support, Africa's legitimate demands, including full veto rights, remain unmet. Progress has been painfully slow. Your Excellencies, 2025, the 80th anniversary of the United Nations, must be a turning point. The African Union, through the C-10, calls on the General Assembly to act decisively. The reform of the Security Council is not a matter of convenience, but of necessity, essential for the credibility of multilateralism itself. On this landmark occasion, we therefore issue a call to all UN member states, and especially the permanent members of the Security Council, to engage earnestly in the reform negotiations and to honor the African common position. Correcting this historic injustice is indispensable to the legitimacy and effectiveness of the United Nations in the 21st century. In conclusion, I wish to invite Your Excellencies to enrich our deliberations today so that this 7th summit becomes a milestone in our common struggle. Let us reaffirm with one voice that Africa will no longer wait on the margins of history. I thank you.
I thank the chairperson, Yusuf, for his statement and for his steadfast leadership in ensuring the African Union Commission provides the necessary support to the C-10. Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to invite His Excellency João Manuel González Lorenzo, my brother, President of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union, to deliver the keynote address on the theme commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the Ezowini Consensus and the SAT Declaration, 2 decades of the common African position, redressing historical injustice, advancing equity and inclusivity in the UN Security Council.
Thank you very much.
Monsieur le Président Julius Mabao, Président de la République de Sierra Leone.
Forma do Conselho de Segurança da Excelência, chefes de Estado e de Governo do C10, Excelência Mahmoud Ali Youssouf, Presidente da Comissão da União Africana, minhas senhoras, meus senhores. Na qualidade de Presidente da República de Angola e na de Presidente em exercício da
President of the Chairman of the African Union, we commemorate another anniversary of the Ezowini Consensus and the third declaration with this committee of the African Union on the reform of the UN Security Council. The Organization of the United Nations was born for a more just society based on the mutual respect among peoples at a time when the African countries had not achieved their independence and their space as sovereign countries among the international community. 20 years ago, in Ezowini and Sirte in Africa, Africa expressed their voice, launching a clear message based on irrefutable principle of justice and world coordination by adopting the Essolini Consensus in March of 2005 and the C-10 Declaration in July of the same year. Our continent showed to the world its willingness to end the situation of a victim to be part of the United Nations. However, after all these years, almost nothing was done to respond to the demands of the peoples of Africa, the African continent that represents more than 1.2 billion people, that occupies almost 1/3 of the seats in the General Assembly, has been excluded by the major decisions in the Council, the Security Council of the United Nations. There are intergovernmental negotiations that are being too slow, and many times there's stop due to divisions on the negotiations, and that can harm the dynamics of the process for peace. But our unity continues firm and unbreakable. These two documents, Essolini and C-10, express the willing of the African peoples to achieve that goal. Based on these two documents and through this body here convened, the Security Council of the United Nations should have at least 2 permanent seats for Africa, with all rights and prerogatives, including the right of veto, as long as it exists, and 5 non-permanent seats, additional ones for the African states to ensure a just and equitative attribution of the seats, so that the African continent, instead of an object of decisions, to be an agent of those decisions. This demand is not excessive nor symbolic, but it represents an expression of its legitimate right, justified by its geopolitical position currently. Taking into account its demographic weight and the fact that Africa is the continent that is more often the object of the Security Council, but at the same time the least represented. We consider that one Security Council that treats Africa in a non-equal way, we demand that we have a more active and strong voice for the safety, security, and development.
Equidade e desenvolvimento sustentável. Confrontados com os desafios globais atuais, oferece-nos um quadro propício para reforçar a unidade e a solidariedade continental, apoiando-nos em posições comuns, como as que celebramos hoje, mas também para defender princípios essenciais como a soberania dos Estados, a não ingerência e o direito ao desenvolvimento, que nos são caros e que garantem a inclusão equilibrada de África na governação global. Assim, em nome dos Estados-membros da União Africana, gostaria de expressar ao Comitê dos 10 chefes de Estado e de Governo da União Africana,
heads of state, and to the Union, African Union, our gratitude, and to and to express our gratitude to the work done. In a political context that had difficulty into translating in governmental structure, the efforts are more vital than ever because they materialize a diplomacy pan-African determined, cohesive, and valuing the collective from someone who's always willing to be part of the table where all the great issues of the humankind are decided. Us, as African leaders, will continue to support wholly the C-10 positions, reinforce their political goals, and most of all, to be united towards initiatives, putting aside the divisions so that we can walk together the whole time and achieve results that will satisfy the collective interests of our continent. Excellencies, we are here today not only to celebrate a date, but also to transform this occasion on a moment in a moment of reflection, to be clear and to achieve goals. 20 years later, we have to question the reasons why Africa's voice continues to be marginalized in the great world decisions, and why our legitimate claims are taken or received with indifference, even with lack of consideration. Before that, it's imperative that our position will be strengthened, gain impact and sovereignty. And we underline or underscore the relevance of these diplomatic instruments that we have to continue defending firmly in all international forums, reaffirming our fundamental demands. Africa is the cradle of humanity. We have millennial cultures, the land where the most old civilizations of the world were born. It's also a youth continent, where almost half of our population is less than 20 years of age. They bring with them an energy, a transforming energy. It's the resilience continent. In spite of the history wounds, every day they build innovative solutions for development to a peaceful convivence. But this hope is leading with a bitter reality when we are faced with the scenarios that show that the African continent still does not have an effective voice in the multilateral system. This is not an isolated claim. This is a legitimate demand, a global demand, because the Security Council is excluding a whole continent of the full participation. They cannot aspire to be respected as a guardian of peace and international safety or security. The world is facing existential crisis, pandemics, and terrorism. In all those challenges, Africa is not only a victim, it's also part of the solution. Because of that, it's important that we continue claiming our space to make our voice heard. To finish my intervention, I want to support the CT members for their leadership role, and I want to ask them to continue together in this fight for equity, justice, and in Africa, which has been led by this group with great determination, wisdom, and with a Pan-American vision that deserves our deep gratitude and sympathy and kindness. I live here. I wanna give my support unconditional to Mr. Julius Nadabio, the President of Sierra Leone, and the members of the Committee of the African Union about the reform of the Security Council of the United Nations, with the deepest conviction that under his leadership we will be able to have our points of view heard about the position of Africa in the Security Council of the United States. Thank you very much for your attention.
I thank
أشكر الرئيس لورينسو على الكلمة العظيمة التي
unity and resolve.
أشكر السيد لورينسو على كلمته العظيمة المنيرة، وسنستمع الآن إلى رؤساء
of
Sua Excelência William Ruto. Tenha a palavra, por favor. E eu, presidente do C-10, Vossas Excelências, chefes de governo, presidente da União Africana, senhoras e senhores, eu quero começar, quero louvar o presidente Bio pela sua liderança dedicada e o seu empenho inquebrantável com a voz da África na agenda do Conselho de Segurança das Nações Unidas. Também quero cujos esforços fortaleceram a posição africana no centro da discussão global. Excelências,
Luini Consensus and the Sirte Declaration, milestones that establish the common African position on Security Council reform, alongside the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. We are called to reflect on our long and determined journey towards a just, democratic, representative, and effective international order. I urge us to move forward with clarity and purpose on three urgent priorities. Number one, we must amplify Africa's voice in every forum, carrying this agenda into bilateral, regional, multilateral engagements so that Africa's message can resonate in every space that we find. Secondly, as the world questions whether the United Nations remains fit for purpose, and I think there is a very big debate about it, we must insist that Africa's continued exclusion is unacceptable and indefensible. At 80, the UN's credibility will be judged by whether it finally recognizes and delivers justice and representation for the 1.4 billion people of the African continent. And third, we must stand united in defending the common African position. To deviate from or dilute it would betray the trust of the very people that elected us. Unity is our greatest strength, and in one voice we must uphold this position with unwavering clarity. Excellencies, Africa carries a disproportionate share of the Security Council's agenda and is among the largest contributors of the UN peacekeeping. Yet we remain the only continent without permanent representation. This historic injustice must come to an end sooner rather than later. Beyond asserting our right, we must be clear about what we seek and how to achieve it. Securing Africa's rightful seats is our common demand. But we must also be prepared to shoulder the responsibilities that come with permanent membership, including how we will choose our representatives. This is a delicate and complex undertaking, but also an opportunity to show Africa's maturity, cohesion, and a vision for an effective international order. We must therefore begin this essential conversation as of immediate. Only then will Africa be taken seriously, and only then can our collective aspirations translate into meaningful global influence. As heads of state and government, we have made a solemn commitment. Our unity is the guarantee of progress, and our shared determination the safeguard against any delay. Kenya reaffirms its unwavering commitment to the common African position. We stand ready to work with the C-10 members, the African Union, and the broader UN membership to ensure Africa's demands are no longer deferred. I thank you for your attention.
I thank President Ruto for his intervention. And I invite Her Excellency Netumbo Nandi Daiwa, President of Namibia.
Thank you, Your Excellency Julius Maad Bio, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and coordinator of the African Union Committee of 10, heads of state and government on the United Nations Security Council reform, Your Excellency Joao Manuel Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union, Chairperson of the African Union, Your Excellencies, heads of states, ladies and gentlemen. 20 years ago, African leaders have agreed and adopted the African Common Position on the reform of the UN Security Council, thus become a roadmap, well-known document as Wiener Consensus and the Ceres Declaration. Subsequently, a committee of 10 heads of state and government of the AU was set up to spearhead the African Common Position. Today, we are here to reflect on the work we have started 20 years ago. Those pivotal documents, born from our collective desire and unwavering commitment to Africa's progress and unity, have played an instrumental role in further shaping our continent's vision to being a dynamic force in the global arena. Your Excellencies, the 8th anniversary of the United Nations is an opportune time for us to reflect on the values and the principles upon which this organization is grounded. Our repeated call for a United Nation that is fit for purpose, representatives, and reflects of a present-day reality has become imperative. Africa deserves permanency at all global decision forums, especially those seized with making decisions related to the maintenance of international peace and security. For 2 decades, the Common African Position has gained traction with broader support from many interested groups. This is our reminder that our quest to redress historical injustice and advance equality for a more inclusive and representative Security Council is just and commonly shared. Allow me to acknowledge with gratitude the immense support from all interested groups for the Common Africa position, which culminated in the recognition of Africa as a priority and a special case in the reform process, as reflected in the outcome document of relevant United Nations process, including the PEC for the future. While the reform process continues, Africa should be proud to have sustained a unified voice within the intergovernmental negotiation since the inception of this process. As we prepare to submit the Africa model on UN reform, we call on the 5 permanent members of the UN Security Council to lend their support to us, to stand on the right side of history, and to ensure justice for future generations. Africa is not asking for handouts. We are demanding our rightful place in a council that is tasked with the maintenance of international peace and security, a matter that greatly concerns us, our children, and our children's children. Chairperson, as I conclude, I wish to state that 2025 also marks the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Conference on Women and the 25th anniversary of the UN Security Council Resolution 1325 on women, peace, and security. Therefore, as Africa strives for equal representation in the world's premier peace and security body, we must also ensure that African women and women from other parts of the world are equally participating in important peace and security decision-making platform at the national, sub-regional, continental, and international level. I will not end without thanking Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, for the great leadership you have provided to the C-10 as a coordinator over the years. Your leadership is highly commendable and is bearing fruits for Africa. I thank you.
I thank my dear sister, Her Excellency Netumbo Nandi Daiwa, for that intervention. We now go to the Vice President of Equatorial Guinea. You have the floor, please.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I take the floor on behalf and in representation of His Excellency Obiang Sogo, President of the Equatorial Guinea, to express our acknowledgement of your in your position as the coordinator of the C-10, your leadership, your strong commitment defending the common African position within the reforms of the Security Council. Would like to thank you for the initiative of gathering this summit during the high-level General Assembly week. Today we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Sirte Declaration and of the Esloveni Council, two historical instruments that shaped the common African position on the reform of the Security Council. After 2 decades, it shows strongly the soundness of our unity and the fairness of our demands in the global agenda. While it is true that throughout these 20 years, the African position is well known, it has greater and greater support. We mustn't forget that while we're celebrating the 80th anniversary of the UN, the historic injustice against Africa persists. It is important to point that out because while we reiterate the values defended in the Charter of the UN, the African continent, with its geopolitical importance, its population, and contributions to peace and security, continue to be excluded from permanent membership in the Security Council. So it is not well represented as a non-permanent member. This undermines the legitimacy and credibility and efficiency of the UN. Mr. Chairman, the 80th anniversary of the UN is a critical crossroad to promote the international commitment in view of the Compact for the Future, which says that Africa must be recognized as a special case and as a priority in the process of the reform of the Security Council. It is essential for us to now present and defend the AU model on the reforms of the Council while we have intergovernmental negotiations. We must promote this reform process. We don't need to reiterate our position. The future of the UN depends on its capacity to transform and respond to current reality. A Security Council that continues to exclude the African continent cannot speak with moral authority in today's world. The African Union's model on the Security Council reform is the only model that guarantees equity, corrects the exclusion, strengthens the legitimacy of the Security Council. Just to conclude, I would like to briefly point out that if we continue, if the reform continues on these endless debates about whether Africa deserves or not its place as a permanent member on adequate and an inadequate representation as non-permanent, then the process runs the risk of losing its credibility and purpose. How many more declarations, pacts, results must we have repeating what we've known for so long? Africans' exclusion constitutes an injustice. Before taking concrete steps, how many more intergovernmental negotiations must we have? We cannot reach 100 years of these organizations and celebrate that if this injustice persists. Our voice must be high and clear. We cannot continue to accept to have these perpetual debates that end up in just no tangible recognition. Thank you very much.
I thank the Vice President for his intervention. I now give the floor to the Vice President of Uganda. You have the floor, please.
Your Excellency Manuel Lorenzo, President of Angola and Chair of the African Union, Your Excellency Mada Bio, President of Sierra Leone and Coordinator of the C-10 and also Chair of this session, Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, the Chairperson of the African Union, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. I thank Your Excellency Dr. Julius Maada Bio, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone, for convening this 7th summit of the Committee of 10 African Union Heads of State and Government on the reform of the United Nations Security Council at this important time when we mark the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. I also express deep appreciation to Your Excellency Maada Bio as the coordinator of the C-10 and the entire leadership of the government of the Republic of Sierra Leone for the unwavering commitment to advancing the common African position on the reform of the United Nations Security Council since its adoption in 2005 and for keeping Africa solidly united. There is no doubt that the C-10 has made significant progress in promoting, advocating, and canvassing for the support of the common African position through diplomatic engagements with several relevant stakeholders and interest groups within the intergovernmental negotiation frameworks and other multilateral levels. Uganda remains committed to the mandate given to us by the African Union to promote, advocate, and canvass for support of the common African position on the reform of the United Nations Security Council as stipulated in a Swahili consensus and the SATE declaration. We now need to move the process forward to achieve tangible results. Excellencies, in this regard, I express satisfaction with the African Union model on the reform of the UN Security Council as it aligns with the Eswatini Consensus and SATE Declaration. Africa must be represented in the UN Security Council by not less than 2 permanent seats with equal prerogatives and privileges of the permanent membership and 2 more permanent seats in the non-permanent category. The time is now for the genuine demonstration of the political will by the 5 permanent members on the UN Security Council to consent to the full reform of the Council to make it more inclusive, just, equitable, transparent, responsive, and democratic. We reiterate our demand to rectify the historical injustices against Africa, which should not be perpetuated any longer, and for Africa to be prioritized as a special case for adequate representation on the UN Security Council. We need to step up building the Africa we want in accordance with the vision of the African Union, cohesive, secure, prosperous, united, and speaking with one voice on all aspects of the UN Security Council reform process, thus fostering the maintenance of international peace and security for global development. As I conclude, we remain steadfast in our demand for the immediate full reform of the UN Security Council and for Africa to be adequately represented in both permanent and non-permanent categories in line with the common African position. Any further postponement of the Council's reform process undermines Africa's interests, the maintenance of international peace and security, and global development. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the Vice President for her intervention and now invite the Foreign Minister of Algeria. You have the floor, please.
Excellency President Julius Maada Bio, Coordinator of the C-10, Excellency President João Lourenço, Chairperson of the African Union, Excellency the Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Ministers, Ambassadors, and distinguished delegates, as we mark the 20th anniversary of the Eswatini Consensus and the third declaration, we stand together to take stock of 2 decades of tireless efforts by Africa to correct a long-standing historical injustice while reflecting on the path forward with a renewed determination and a clearer vision. Looking back at our collective journey, Algeria believes that our action has made a significant breakthrough in 3 aspects. First, Africa has succeeded in broadening the base of support for its common position. Today, our common position enjoys growing support among UN member states and interest groups. We take this as a token of recognition of both the legitimacy and the relevance of Africa's demands as articulated in the Esselunini Consensus. Second, Africa has also succeeded in fostering a global understanding of the particularity of its case. The reason being, on one hand, that our position embodies the collective will of the 55 member states of the African Union, and on the other hand, that it aims first and foremost to correct the historical injustice inflicted upon our continent. Third, and perhaps more crucially and decisively, Africa has proven to the world that it is ready to contribute its fair share to the collective security system with commitment, resolution, and dedication. Through the A3 mechanism, Africa has demonstrated that it harbors no ambitions other than to make a selfless contribution to enable the Security Council to fully assume its responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security. While these successes are significant, the road to fulfilling our mandate remains long and fraught with challenges. The collective security system is going through an ever-deepening crisis. Its main tool, the UN Security Council, is in a state of almost complete paralysis. And more concerns are being voiced regarding this situation, and more appeals are being made to overcome this stalemate and to prevent it from deteriorating further and getting out of control. In view of this situation, our commitments are twofold. At the internal level, we must safeguard the unity that has been our greatest strength and most valuable asset. We have all seen how this paid off with the African Union becoming a full member of the G20. We should therefore give due consideration to the compelling need to put our house in order by getting all African countries recommit and re-engage under the umbrella of the African common position. At the external level, our committees ought to remain fully engaged in the intergovernmental negotiations process, IGN. Our roadmap should include engagements with all stakeholders to build on the progress achieved so far with the ultimate goal of garnering the widest possible understanding and support for Africa's legitimate aspirations and fair objectives. We are indeed duty-bound to remain faithful to our common position because it is sound, because it is fair, and because it is fully responsive to our collective concerns and interests. This is, in our view, the only way forward to ensure that our collective voice paves the way toward promoting a healthier multilateral system grounded on the rules, principles, and ideals enshrined in the UN Charter. I thank you all.
I thank the Honorable Foreign Minister for his intervention. I now call on the Honorable Foreign Minister of Congo to take the floor. You have the floor, please.
Merci, Excellence.
Thank you, Your Excellency, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone. Your Excellency, Lorenzo, President of the Republic of Angola and current chair of the African Union, the chairperson of the Commission, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I'm speaking on behalf of His Excellency President Denis Sassou Nguesso, who mandated me to represent him here. Before I go forth, I would like to commend your personal commitment in the untiring promotion of the interests of our continent. This commitment is further strengthened today through this meeting at a time when Africa is taking up resolutely the challenge of being involved in global governance so as to assume its full responsibility in the Committee of Nations. Increasingly, we are witnesses to changing geopolitical situations, and this has called on us to embark upon a reform of the Security Council. We can also bear witness of the fact that the Security Council has found it very difficult to resolve some crucial and urgent security issues in an equitable way. Hence, the question that will legitimately come to our minds is that of knowing whether a wider representation within that body would not lead to greater efficacy of its work. And it is our conviction that an expansion that takes into consideration the size and the role of Africa in this context, taking into consideration the representation of the continent in this body will be most adequate. We believe that 2025, which is also the 20th anniversary of the Eswelin Consensus, as well as the CERT Declaration, and also the anniversary of the United Nations, the establishment of the United Nations, all concur to require of to reconsider this situation and embark on the reform that we thought of during the Pact of the Future. It is necessary to reform the Security Council, and this has been more evident in the current geopolitical situation. And in this debate, Africa has always sought to promote greater dialogue, expanding into different interest groups and stakeholders, and this is why we also have relations with the 5 permanent members. And we do hope that in the context of this celebration of the 20th anniversary, we will be able to re-energize the multilateralism, particularly for the benefit of Africa in this context where the greater part of issues dealt by the Security Council concern Africa. Thank you for your attention.
Monsieur le Ministre.
Thank you, Honorable Minister, for your statement.
Call on the Foreign Minister of Zambia to take the floor.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency Julius Maada Bio, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and Coordinator of the AU Committee of 10. Your Excellency João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union. Your Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission, Your Excellencies, Heads of State and Government, Honorable Ministers, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for giving me the opportunity to contribute to this very important discussion on behalf of President Hakainde Hichilema, President of the Republic of Zambia, who has mandated me to deliver this statement on his behalf. Allow me at the outset to join delegations that have spoken before me to thank the coordinator of the C-10 for convening this important engagement to commemorate 2 landmark milestones in the ongoing pursuit of equitable and effective reform of the United Nations Security Council, the Ezulini Consensus and the C-10 Declaration. These historic instruments stand as a testament to Africa's unwavering commitment to global peace, security, and the principles of justice and fairness within the international system. Your Excellencies, the Ezulini Consensus and the C-10 Declaration adopted by the African Union in 2005 embody the collective African voice demanding meaningful reform of the Security Council. These instruments underscore the continent's firm stance on expanding both permanent and non-permanent membership to better reflect the geopolitical realities of the 21st century and to ensure Africa's rightful representation and influence in matters of international peace and security. The Committee's tireless efforts to build consensus among all UN member states reflects Africa's dedication to constructive dialogue, inclusivity, and multilateralism. We reiterate our commitment to a transparent, accountable, and representative Security Council which can effectively address the complex security challenges facing our world today. Your Excellencies, while we acknowledge the slow pace of the intergovernmental negotiation process, we must also recognize that the geopolitical dynamics surrounding the Security Council reform remain complex. Yet we cannot afford to be complacent. The time has come for us to reinvigorate our strategy, particularly how we engage with our P5 counterparts and the other influential stakeholders. To this end, allow me to highlight 3 key approaches as recently affirmed at the 13th C-10 ministerial meeting held in Lusaka in June this year. 1. Enhancing high-level political engagements. We must scale up direct dialogue at the highest political levels with our counterparts, the permanent members of the Security Council, and other strategic actors. Our engagements should translate into tangible political support for the common African position. 2. Leveraging multilateral platforms. Africa must continue to use its collective influence in multilateral forums, including the African Union, the Non-Aligned Movement, and the G77 plus China, to build broad-based coalitions that support our call for a fairer and more representative council. 3. Strategic communication and diplomacy. It is imperative to recalibrate our diplomatic messaging. We must assert clearly and consistently that Africa's demand is not a favor, but a matter of historic justice, sovereign equality, and global legitimacy. Africa's 54 member states represent more than a quarter of the UN membership, yet remain without permanent representation. This status quo is neither tenable nor justifiable. Your Excellencies, as we commemorate this 20th anniversary, let us renew our unity of purpose and sense of urgency. The Ezuluni Consensus remains our guiding framework. Let us guard it jealously, promote it proactively, and implement it strategically. We owe it to the generations before us and the future of Africa to ensure that Africa is not just present at the table of global governance, but is a permanent, influential voice in shaping the decisions that affect our continent and the world at large. Your Excellencies, I thank you.
I thank the Foreign Minister for his intervention. I now give the floor to the Acting Minister representing Libya.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, Dr. Julio Mayo Bio, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and the coordinator of the Committee of the 10th, Your Excellency, the Commissioner of the African Union, Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Your Excellencies, Ministers, I would like to convey to you the greetings of the Presidential Committee in our country. He could not come today. I would like to submit to you on behalf of Libya our thanks and appreciation for this invitation to coordinate the work of the Committee of 10, which comes at a historical moment where we celebrate 2 decades through Isolini consensus and CERT declaration. We would like to renew our will towards a better that is more effective, more just in the whole world. Mr. President, this is not a crossing station, but this is one of long series of activities and meetings that have been held for 20 years in different African capitals. This reflects our commitment and our political will in order to get our legitimate rights in our inside the Security Council. This was the result of our common struggle, which resulted to certain agreements. And we are going to submit our model for the reform of Security Council. This reflects how Africa has been moving towards building our future. I would like to remind you the points that were reflected during the 6th comment by our President, which is the importance of the political history at all levels. And we have to confirm the just representation Security Council, as we know, veto has become a means in the hands of large countries in order to achieve their own interests and the interests of their friends. We ask for the abolition of veto or to reform it. The reform of Security Council should achieve fairness to all countries and should be and we reject the fact that Security Council has been neglecting African questions. My country confirms that it is necessary that the voice of African countries should be united in asking for the reform of Security Council to make it more representative, more transparent, and more democratic through recognizing the historic injustice against Africa. And as you know, we represent more than 50 countries inside the United Nations. We have to apply also the Pact for the Future, and we have to recognize what is going on in the world now. The unity of African position necessitates that we have to work hard through out of this position, my country, on this occasion, ask you to be during the elections in the General Assembly in 2027, we hope that you will support our candidacy for non-permanent countries in the Security Council. We confirm our African position, and we are going to consecrate all our means to achieve our objectives. And we have to speak in one voice so that we can achieve the desired objective, and our people can take the right place in the field of decision making. I thank you very much.
To Senegal.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. We'd like to acknowledge the presence of His Excellency Charles Lorenzo, the Chairperson of the African Union. And as I start this statement, I would like to seize the opportunity to convey the brotherly greetings of President Bassirou Faye of Senegal, who unfortunately could not be with us because he's still on the way to New York. We'd like to also re-echo the expression of commendation for the untiring commitment of the President of Sierra Leone in the promotion of C-10 interests of Africa relating to the reform of the United Nations Security Council. We also wish to express satisfaction with the presence of the chairperson of the African Union, Mr. Mohamed Yusuf. We are grateful to him for the support he's given to this committee. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, at this juncture where multilateralism is being challenged, we are happy to be able to meet here for the 20th anniversary of our common position document, as well as the celebration of the 80th anniversary of the United Nations. This happens at a time when the United Nations is confronted with many challenges, including the delays in the implementation of the 2030 agenda, and thus having impact on the ability of the continent to take up challenges to resolve issues relating to peace and security. Notwithstanding the efforts deployed by the Secretary General to ensure that the various organs are able to carry out their function adequately, there is also some other urgent needs that have emerged, which have to do with greater justice, representativeness, and allocation of commitment or sharing of duty on the continent. Because 80 years after it was created, the Security Council is still a unique organ, which is such that a small portion of the membership of the organization are monopolizing the power as against the majority of the members. The Ezewini Declaration and the CERT Declaration are statements that come in a timely manner to repair this injustice that is done to Africa, where our countries are still deprived of the access to international sovereignty. As a matter of fact, we commend leaders for the effort that has been invested so far on this matter, where the effort is made to present Africa as a special case for special attention. And this is seen in the common African position that we have brought up. In the same vein, the adoption by the African, of the common position, which will be presented during the ongoing session of the General Assembly, is indeed another pathway that will enable us to have an effective progress through the IGN. The way is long, but nothing should stop us from carrying to the conclusive end this commitment to take steps to resolve problems for the welfare and benefit of majority of the population in the world. Africa should be an accelerator of the reform that is being proposed that will enable all parties to get involved in a fair and logical process of reform. The roadmap to 2030, which was validated by the Lusaka conference, is pointing to the right direction, and therefore we need at the general debate session of this 80th session underscore that, and I would like to give you the assurance of the position of Senegal on the support to this position and the determination to ensure that Africa is given the entitled position within the Security Council permanent membership. Thank you.
Senegal. And I invite statements from our distinguished guests, member states, and interest groups participating in the intergovernmental negotiations. We will go in this order for now, and we start with Brazil Foreign Minister on behalf of G4.
His Excellency Dr. Julius Maada Bio, President of the Republic of Sierra Leone and Coordinator of the African Union Committee of C-10. His Excellency João Manuel Gonçalves Lourenço, President of the Republic of Angola and Chairperson of the African Union. His Excellency Mahmoud Ali Yusuf, Chairperson of the African Union Commission. Ministers and heads of delegation of C-10. Excellencies, I thank President Julius Maada Bio of the Republic of Sierra Leone, as well as other leaders from C-10 states, for inviting the G4 to attend this meeting. It's an honor for Brazil to speak on behalf of the G4 countries. As we mark the 20th anniversary of the Eswini Consensus, alongside with the CERT Declaration, we celebrate a valuable contribution of African diplomacy to the global debate on the Security Council reform. The consensus remains the most authoritative and unified expression of Africa's legitimate demand to address historical injustice through greater representation in both categories of the United Nations Security Council membership. It calls for the correction of historical injustice that have left the continent without permanent membership in the Council. Mr. President, we are living in unprecedented times. The 80th anniversary of the United Nations is marked by relentless challenges which risk pushing the world into an unpredictable spiral. The survival of multilateralism is now at stake. It is precisely in the face of these challenges that a representative, legitimate, and effective United Nations with a fully functional and responsive Security Council is needed the most. And yet, there are some who still hesitate, falter, and lay idle instead of moving for urgent action on reform. We all know this is not an option, it's a necessity. The African Union and G4 are united in their call for urgent reform of the Security Council with the expansion of both categories of membership. The world leaders recognized at the Summit of the Future the importance of improving the representation of the underrepresented or unrepresented regions and groups, such as Africa, South Pacific, and Latin America and the Caribbean. Adequate representation of countries from these regions and groups on the Council is essential for making it more representative, more legitimate, and more effective, capable of fulfilling its role under the UN Charter. It is evident that G4 firmly supports the case of Africa. Mr. President, the G4 model proposes that the Security Council's membership increase from the current 15 to 25 or 26 by adding 6 permanent and 4 or 5 non-permanent members. Among the 6 new permanent members, 2 are proposed to be from each of African states and Asia-Pacific states, 1 from Latin America and Caribbean states, and 1 from Western European and other states. On rights and prerogatives associated with permanent membership, such as the veto, G4 takes the position that new permanent members should, in principle, bear the same responsibilities and obligations as the current ones. Mr. President, the time has come to voice the convergence which is also shared by a clear majority of member states. Let us take the 80th session of the General Assembly as a historical opportunity for change. Let us work together to translate years of discussion into concrete, result-oriented, text-based negotiations with clearly defined timelines where the interests and the needs of every region and groups can be properly assessed and debated. The African Union can count on the G4 in this regard. I thank you very much.
I thank the Brazil Foreign Minister on behalf of